The aliens in the great meeting hall of Centauri Station stared at the two humans who had just entered. Some laughed behind their hands or tentacles. Others whispered to each other. The humans looked so small and weak compared to the other species. Commander. John Phillips walked with his head held high despite the mockery. Next to him, Lieutenant Susan Clark kept her face neutral, though her eyes noted every snicker and dismissive gesture. They represented Earth at this gathering of the Galactic Confederation, and they would not show weakness. "The Earth representatives have arrived," announced the robotic translator. "They wish to address the Council regarding the recent Draxan attacks on their outer colonies." Ambassador Lyrax of the Vorgath Empire made a clicking sound with his mandibles that his species used to show amusement. The large insect-like alien towered over the humans as they approached the central speaking platform. "Let us hear what the primitives have to say," Lyrax said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Perhaps they will entertain us with their simple understanding of space warfare." John stepped onto the platform, which rose slightly so the entire hall could see him. The room contained representatives from over 30 alien species, most of whom considered humans to be barely worth noticing. "Thank you for allowing us to speak," John began. "As you know, the Draxan Empire has attacked 3 of our colonies in the past month. Over 10,000 humans have died. We come to inform the Confederation that Earth will be taking defensive measures." "What kind of defensive measures could your species possibly take?" asked a blue-skinned delegate from the Azurian Collective. "Your technology is at least 300 years behind the Draxan." Susan stepped forward. "We have been developing new ships and weapons. We call it the Supernova Initiative." This announcement was met with open laughter from many of the delegates. Ambassador Lyrax walked closer to the humans, his 8-foot frame looking down at them. "Your species barely understands gravimetric field manipulation," Ambassador Lyrax said, mandibles clicking rapidly with amusement. "And you expect us to believe you've developed a fleet capable of challenging the Draxan Armada? The Draxan have ships that can consume entire moons to fuel their growth. What do you have, fusion engines and railguns?" John met the ambassador's compound eyes without flinching. "We are merely informing the Confederation of our plans as required by treaty. We don't seek your approval or assistance." Far from this meeting, deep within Earth's solar system, something very different was happening. In a massive hidden facility, orbiting Neptune, Strategic Defense Director Catherine Wells watched a test firing of humanity's newest weapon. The test chamber on her screen showed a small device, no larger than a coffee cup. A robotic arm placed a chunk of asteroid rock next to it. When activated, the device created a tiny black point in space. The rock was instantly pulled toward this point, compressing smaller and smaller until it vanished completely. Microsingularity. Test 17 is a complete success, reported lead scientist Alan Jackson through the communication system. Power consumption is now within acceptable parameters. We can safely install the generators in the fleet. Catherine smiled. Excellent work, Alan. How soon can we deploy? The first 50 ships can be operational within 30 days. The remaining 150 will need another 2 months. Catherine nodded. This was good news. According to intelligence reports, the Draxan would reach Jupiter in about 40 days. They would arrive expecting to find a helpless human defense force. Instead, they would meet the supernova fleet. For 5 years, humanity had put on a show for the rest of the galaxy. While publicly struggling with basic space technology, Earth had secretly poured resources into Project Supernova. They had discovered how to create and control artificial microsingularities, miniature black holes that could be used as both weapons and power sources. The alien species of the Confederation had never considered this approach. They had all developed along similar technological paths, focusing on energy weapons and force fields. Humanity had taken a completely different route. "Director Wells, we're receiving a transmission from new anchorage in the asteroid belt," announced her assistant. On the screen appeared the face of Engineer Paul Martinez. He looked excited, his eyes wide and bright. "Director, we found it. The asteroid contains exactly what we were looking for. There's enough exotic matter here to power the entire fleet for years." Catherine felt relief wash over her. This was the final piece they needed. Secure it immediately, Paul. Begin extraction as soon as possible. Back at Centauri Station, the meeting was wrapping up. The alien delegates had moved on to other matters, dismissing the humans' announcement as meaningless posturing. As John and Susan prepared to leave, Ambassador Lyrax approached them one more time. "I hope your species has a backup plan," he said with what passed for a smile among his kind. "When the Draxan finish with your colonies, they will come for Earth itself. Perhaps if you beg for mercy now, some of your people might be spared to serve as labor for more advanced species." Susan looked directly at the ambassador. "We appreciate your concern, Ambassador, but humanity has survived worse threats than the Draxan." "Impossible," Lyrax scoffed. "Your species hasn't even been in space for 300 years. The Draxan have been consuming worlds since before your ancestors discovered fire." John placed a hand on Susan's shoulder, signaling her to remain calm. "History is full of unexpected turns, Ambassador. The Draxan may find that humans are not as simple as they appear." As they walked away, the two humans could hear the ambassador's clicking laughter behind them. Let him laugh, John thought. In 1 month, no one in the galaxy would be laughing at humanity again. Aboard their small ship returning to Earth, Susan finally let her frustration show. "They treat us like children. If they knew what we were capable of." "That's our advantage," John reminded her. "Their underestimation gives us the element of surprise." Director Wells was right to keep Supernova secret for so long. In the darkness of space near Jupiter, hidden shipyards worked at full capacity. The Supernova fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The ships were relatively small, only about 1 kilometer in length, but shaped like starbursts with 8 points extending from a central core. Within each ship was the power to create and control microsingularities that could tear apart matter at the subatomic level. Captain Laura Bennett walked through the nearly completed flagship of the fleet, which had been named Defiance. Her crew was running final system checks, preparing for the ship's first official deployment. "Singularity core is stable, Captain," reported her engineer. "All weapon systems are green." Laura nodded, placing her hand on the smooth wall of the corridor. "Soon," she whispered to the ship. "Soon you'll show the galaxy what humanity can do." Across the solar system, humanity prepared in silence. The Draxan were coming, confident in their superiority, unaware that they were heading toward a force, unlike anything they had encountered in their 1,000 years of conquest. The galaxy had laughed at humanity. They wouldn't be laughing much longer. The massive Draxan warship moved slowly through space, its outer shell pulsing with veins of red energy. It looked more like a living creature than a spaceship. Behind it followed 20 smaller vessels, all with the same organic appearance. They approached the human mining colony of New Montana, their weapons ready. On the bridge of his flagship, Draxan General Vikaloth watched the small human settlement grow larger on his view screen. His scaled skin glistened under the dim lights as he turned to his second-in-command. "Scan for defenses," he ordered. "Already complete, General," replied the officer. "They have only basic shield technology and a few orbital gun platforms. Nothing that can harm our ships." Vikaloth made a sound that might have been laughter. "Begin the harvest. I want this system consumed within 3 days." The Draxan ships spread out, surrounding the colony and its nearby mining operations. From their hulls emerged smaller craft that descended toward the planet's surface. The people of New Montana had only minutes to realize they were under attack before the destruction began. In Earth Alliance Command Station, Admiral Richard Hayes watched, helplessly as the signal from New Montana went silent. The holographic display in front of him showed a red marker where the colony had been. It joined 16 other red markers, each representing a human outpost destroyed by the Draxan in recent months. "New Montana is gone," he said quietly. 3 million people. Strategic analyst Maria Gonzalez stood beside him, her dark eyes fixed on the display. She adjusted some controls, and a projection appeared showing the path of the Draxan advance. "They'll reach Earth in 6 months at their current pace," she noted, her face illuminated by the red warning indicators. "They're moving faster than we expected." Admiral Hayes rubbed his tired eyes. "What about the supernova fleet? Are we ready?" "Director Wells reports that the first wave of ships will be operational in 3 weeks," Maria replied. "But we need more time for the full fleet." "We don't have more time," Hayes said grimly. "Contact Director Wells. Tell her we need those ships now." Deep beneath the Himalayan mountains on Earth, an enormous underground facility hummed with activity. In a large central chamber, lead scientist Alan Jackson carefully monitored the quantum entanglement core of what would become the heart of humanity's new fleet. The device was beautiful in a strange way. It floated in the center of the chamber, suspended by invisible forces. Tiny points of intense light orbited around a central dark sphere, like a miniature solar system. Alan barely looked up when Director Catherine Wells entered the room. He was too focused on the readings on his screen. "I've been getting messages from Admiral Hayes every hour," Catherine said. "Please tell me you have good news." Alan finally turned to face her. Despite his exhaustion, there was excitement in his eyes. "The final calibrations are complete," he informed Director Wells. "We've solved the containment problem. The micro-singularities remain stable even when the power fluctuates." "In simple terms, Doctor?" Catherine asked. "The fleet can be deployed within 30 days, maybe sooner. The weapons will work." Catherine nodded, relief evident on her face. "Good, because we just lost New Montana. 3 million people, Alan." The scientist's excitement dimmed. "I heard. My sister's family was there." Catherine placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry, but now we have the means to make sure the Draxan pay for what they've done." Across the solar system, in hidden facilities throughout the asteroid belt and inside the atmospheres of the gas giants, humanity's secret shipyards worked at full capacity. The supernova fleet was nearly ready for its first deployment. Captain Laura Bennett supervised the final loading of supplies aboard the Defiance. Her crew moved with purpose, each person aware of what was at stake. Laura had been chosen to lead the first attack against the Draxan, and she felt the weight of that responsibility. "Captain, incoming transmission from command," called out her communications officer. Laura nodded. "Put it through to my private terminal." In her small office, Laura activated the screen to see Admiral Hayes looking back at her. "Captain Bennett, we've moved up the timetable," he said without preamble. "Intelligence suggests the Draxan fleet will reach Jupiter's moons in 3 weeks. They're moving faster than we predicted." Laura frowned. "Sir, we've only completed full testing on 30 of the 50 ships." "It will have to be enough," Hayes replied. "Deploy your fleet to Jupiter's orbit. Hide within the atmosphere until the Draxan arrive, then spring the trap. If this works, it should buy us time to complete the rest of the fleet." "And if it doesn't work?" Laura asked. Hayes didn't answer directly. "The future of our species depends on this mission, Captain. Don't fail." After the transmission ended, Laura sat in silence for a moment. Then she stood, straightened her uniform, and returned to the bridge. "Change of plans," she announced to her officers. "We deploy in 72 hours. Inform all ship captains." Meanwhile, at the edge of the solar system, Engineer Paul Martinez worked frantically to complete the extraction of exotic matter from the special asteroid they had discovered. This rare material would power the micro-singularity drives of the supernova fleet, giving the ships their unique abilities. "We need to move faster," he told his team as they guided the mining robots. "Command needs this material by the end of the week." One of his assistants looked concerned. "But proper extraction takes at least 2 weeks. If we rush, the material could become unstable." Paul understood the risk, but they had no choice. "We have to try. The Draxan aren't going to wait, and neither can we." In the depths of space, the Draxan fleet continued its relentless advance. In his flagship, General Vikloth reviewed the data from their latest conquest. "The humans have unusual technology," noted his science officer. "Different from other species we've encountered. Different but primitive," Vikloth dismissed. "Their colonies fall just as easily as any other. Their homeworld will be no different." What the Draxan general didn't know was that humanity had been hiding their true capabilities. While publicly struggling with basic interstellar technology, they had secretly developed weapons that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. As the Draxan Armada approached Jupiter, 50 vessels of the supernova fleet moved into position within the gas giant's swirling clouds. Captain Laura Bennett sat in the command chair of the Defiance, her expression determined. "All ships report ready, Captain," said her first officer. "Good," Laura replied. "Now we wait." The trap was set. The Draxan, confident in their superiority, had no idea what was coming. In 3 days they would learn that they had severely underestimated humanity, and the galaxy would never be the same. The massive Draxan flagship called the World Eater led the attack formation toward Jupiter. It was 15 kilometers long, shaped like a giant predatory fish with spines and protrusions along its hull. Behind it followed 300 warships, of various sizes, all with the same organic mechanical design that made them look alive rather than built. General Vikaloth stood on the command deck of the World Eater, his scaled skin reflecting the red emergency lights. The Jupiter mining stations were visible on the long-range scanners. They would be easy targets. "Prepare the harvesting ships," Vikaloth ordered. "I want those stations stripped of all resources. Any humans you find are to be processed for labor." "Camps?" "Yes, General," his second-in-command replied. "What about Earth defenses?" Vikaloth made a dismissive gesture with his clawed hand. "Our scouts report only basic orbital platforms around Earth. Nothing that can threaten our fleet. This will be a simple operation." Hidden within Jupiter's swirling atmosphere, Captain Laura Bennett and the 50 ships of the supernova fleet waited. The Defiance, her flagship, was positioned at the head of the formation. Each ship was relatively small, only 1 kilometer in length, with a distinctive starburst configuration of 8 pointed extensions from a central core. "Draxan fleet has entered the Jupiter system," reported Lieutenant Greg Wilson from the sensor station. 312 ships, including 1 super dreadnought class. Laura nodded, her face calm despite the tension in her chest. The humans were outnumbered 6-1 and the Draxan ships were much larger. But size and numbers weren't everything. "All ships maintain position," she ordered. "Wait until they begin their attack on the mining stations, then execute emergence pattern Delta." The Draxan fleet moved closer to Jupiter's moons, where the human mining operations were located. The first Draxan attack ships launched toward the nearest station, weapons ready. "Now," Laura said. All 50 supernova ships rose from their hiding places in Jupiter's clouds. They moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls suddenly visible against the planet's colorful atmosphere. On the bridge of the World Eater, an alarm sounded. "General, human vessels detected," shouted a Draxan officer in surprise. They were hiding in the gas giant's atmosphere. Vikaloth rushed to the view screen. "How many?" 50 ships. Unknown configuration." The general laughed, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Only 50? Against our 300? This will be even easier than I thought." Laura opened a communication channel that broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Captain Laura Bennett of the Earth Defense Vessel Defiance," she announced. "You are in violation of sovereign human territory. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The response came quickly. General Vikaloth's face appeared on her screen, his alien features twisted in what might have been amusement. "Human captain, your bravery is admirable but foolish," he said. "Surrender your ships and your lives will be spared for labor. Resist and you will be destroyed." Laura cut the transmission without replying. "All ships, activate singularity cores," she ordered. "Target pattern Alpha." Throughout the supernova fleet, crews activated the secret weapon humanity had developed. Inside each ship, the quantum entanglement cores powered up, creating controlled microsingularities that could be projected at a distance. The Draxan general, believing the humans posed no threat, ordered the first wave of his ships to attack. 30 Draxan vessels moved toward the human fleet, weapons charging. "Let them fire first," Laura instructed her fleet. "Wait for it." The lead Draxan ship fired a massive energy beam at the Defiance. The beam never reached its target. Halfway between the ships, space itself seemed to bend and warp. The energy from the weapon was pulled into a tiny black point that appeared suddenly in empty space. "Singularity weapons active," reported Laura's weapons officer. "Target locked." "Fire," Laura ordered. From the Defiance, an invisible wave of energy shot toward the lead Draxon ship. When it reached its target, a micro-singularity formed directly inside the alien vessel. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Draxon ship began to collapse inward, as if being crushed by an invisible hand. Metal and organic components twisted and compressed toward the center of the ship. In seconds, the kilometer-long warship had been crushed to the size of a small asteroid, then smaller still, until it vanished completely, consumed by the artificial black hole that had formed inside it. On the World Eater, General Vikaloth watched in shock as the first ship disappeared. "What just happened?" he demanded. Before anyone could answer, a second Draxon ship imploded, then a third. "All ships, engage the humans," Vikaloth ordered, fear creeping into his voice for the first time. The Draxon fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy, beams, missile swarms, and plasma torpedoes shot toward the human ships. But the Supernova fleet was ready. Each human vessel created micro-singularities in the path of the incoming weapons, absorbing the attacks before they could reach their targets. Then, one by one, they returned fire. It wasn't a battle, but a slaughter. The Draxon ships, supposedly the most feared in the galaxy, were helpless against this new human weapon. They couldn't escape the targeted singularities that formed inside their hulls or in their path. "Target their flagship," Laura ordered as another wave of Draxon ships collapsed into nothingness. The Defiance and 5 other human ships focused their singularity projectors on the World Eater. The massive Draxon vessel tried to retreat, its engines glowing as it attempted to escape. "You can run, but you can't hide," Laura said quietly as she gave the order to fire. 6 micro-singularities formed around the World Eater, creating a gravitational field that the Draxon ship couldn't escape. The massive vessel was pulled in multiple directions at once, its hull stretching and tearing under forces it was never designed to withstand. General Vikaloth watched as his command deck broke apart around him. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was the impossible sight of a human fleet destroying the most powerful armada the Draxon had ever assembled. Within 20 minutes, it was over. Of the 300 Draxon ships, only a handful managed to escape, jumping to faster-than-light travel with damaged systems and terrified crews. They fled back to Draxon space, carrying news that would shake their empire to its core. Laura stood on the bridge of the Defiance, surveying the aftermath. There was no debris from the destroyed Draxon ships. The singularities had consumed everything, leaving empty space where the enemy fleet had been. "Casualties?" she asked. "None, Captain," replied her first officer in amazement. "Not a single human ship was lost," Laura nodded. "Send a message to Earth, Operation Supernova successful, Jupiter system secured." Across the galaxy, in the grand meeting hall of Centauri Station, Ambassador Lyrax was in the middle of a speech about the primitive nature of human technology when an aide rushed in and whispered something in his ear. The insect-like alien froze, his mandibles suddenly still. "Play it," he ordered. A holographic recording appeared in the center of the hall. It showed the Draxon fleet approaching Jupiter, then the emergence of the human ships. Every delegate in the hall watched in stunned silence as the supposedly invincible Draxon warships imploded one after another. When the recording ended, the hall remained silent. Ambassador Lyrax looked around at his fellow delegates, then at the empty human seats, "It seems," he said quietly, "that we have severely underestimated the humans." An emergency session of the Galactic Confederation had been called. Representatives from over 200 alien species filled the Great Hall of Centauri Station. The usual orderly process was forgotten as delegates shouted over each other, demanding answers about the human victory at Jupiter. High Chancellor Jen of the Pax Collective, an elderly alien with pale blue skin and 4 arms, banged a ceremonial staff on the floor to call for order. It took several minutes for the noise to die down. "How long have they had this capability?" demanded the Chancellor, looking directly at Ambassador Lyrax of the Vorgath Empire, who had always claimed to understand humans best. Lyrax's mandibles twitched nervously. Unknown, Chancellor. They gave no indication of such technology during any of our previous encounters. They made fools of us all, hissed the representative from the Medusan worlds, her snake-like hair moving with agitation. While we mocked their primitive ships, they were building weapons that could reshape space itself. The recording of the battle at Jupiter played again on the main screen. The delegates watched in silence as the Draxan ships imploded one after another, crushed by invisible forces that bent the fabric of reality. "This changes everything," said Chancellor Jen. "The balance of power in our galaxy has shifted overnight." Omi, a tall, thin alien with skin like polished metal, stood up. "I propose an immediate alliance against Earth," he said. "The humans have become too dangerous. If they can destroy the Draxan fleet so easily, what's to stop them from turning these weapons on any of us?" Shouts of agreement mixed with calls for caution. The Confederation was dividing before their eyes, some species seeing humans as a new threat, others recognizing a potential ally against the Draxan Empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. The doors to the Great Hall opened. Earth's delegation entered, led by Diplomatic Officer William Carter. He was a tall man with dark skin and a calm expression. The hall fell silent as he walked to the central platform. "The Galactic Confederation has called for explanations," William began. "I am here to provide them." "How long has Earth possessed this singularity weapon technology?" Chancellor Jen asked directly. "We developed the Supernova fleet for defensive purposes only," William replied, his voice steady. "The project began 5 years ago, after the Draxan attacked our colony on New Eden. We kept it secret because we knew how the information would be received." "You mean you didn't trust us?" Ambassador Lyrax said. William looked directly at the insect-like alien. "Ambassador, the last time I was in this hall, you laughed when we mentioned our defense initiatives. You called us primitives. Would you have believed us if we had told you the truth?" Lyrax's mandibles clicked once, but he had no reply. "The supernova technology is powerful," William continued, addressing the entire hall. "But make no mistake, we will protect our people. Earth seeks peaceful relations with all species. We have no interest in conquest or intimidation. We simply refuse to be victims." Back on Earth, the mood was mixed. News of the victory at Jupiter had spread quickly. People celebrated in the streets of major cities, relieved that the Draxan threat had been pushed back. Screens everywhere showed images of the returning supernova fleet, the starburst-shaped ships now symbols of human ingenuity and power. But there was concern too. Many civilians were learning for the first time about Project Supernova and the existence of singularity weapons. Questions were being asked about why such technology had been kept secret, even from Earth's own population. In her private office, at Strategic Defense Headquarters, Director Catherine Wells watched the public reaction on multiple screens. She looked tired but satisfied. Admiral Richard Hayes entered the room and handed her a data tablet. "The Draxan have pulled back to their core systems," he reported. "Intelligence suggests they're in chaos. Their leadership never expected to lose a fleet of that size." "And the Confederation?" Catherine asked. "Divided," replied newly promoted Fleet Commander Laura Bennett, who had just arrived from the Jupiter victory. "Half want to ally with us, the other half are terrified of us." The three leaders studied a holographic map showing the political alignments shifting throughout the galaxy. Species that had been enemies for generations were suddenly seeking alliances with Earth. Others were building defensive pacts against potential human expansion. "Phase 2 begins tomorrow," Catherine said after a moment of silence. Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? The fleet isn't fully deployed yet?" "We don't have a choice," Catherine replied. "We've revealed our hand. Now we need to use our position of strength before the galaxy adjusts." Laura nodded in agreement. "What are my orders?" "Take the Defiance and 5 other ships to the Orion Diplomatic Summit," Catherine instructed. "It's time to reshape the power structure of this sector." In a secure medical facility, lead scientist Alan Jackson monitored the treatment of survivors rescued from the New Montana colony. Among them was a young girl named Amy. Her parents had been killed in the Draxon attack, but she had survived by hiding in a maintenance shaft. "How are you feeling today?" Alan asked gently as he checked her vital signs. "Better," Amy replied. "Did we really beat the bad aliens?" Alan smiled. "Yes, we did. They won't hurt anyone else." "Promise?" His smile faded slightly. "I promise we will do everything we can to keep people safe." As he left the medical ward, Alan met with his research team. They gathered around a table where a new design was displayed, a smaller, more efficient singularity core. "The Mark II prototype is ready for testing," said one of the scientists. "If it works, we can install it in the next generation of ships." Alan studied the design. "Good. Director Wells wants the defensive platforms operational within 3 months. In our deep space." The few Draxon ships that had escaped the battle at Jupiter limped toward their home territory. The crew was still in shock, unable to comprehend how their mighty fleet had been destroyed so easily. On the damaged bridge of the lead ship, Commander Grath received an encrypted transmission from the Draxon Emperor. The giant holographic face that appeared looked furious. "You fled from humans?" the Emperor roared. "Majesty, they have weapons we've never seen before," Grath explained desperately. "They created black holes inside our ships. Nothing could stop them." The Emperor's rage turned to cold calculation. "Return to the home system. Bring all data on these human weapons. We will adapt. We will overcome. The Draxon Empire has faced setbacks before." "What about the other species?" Grath asked. "They will see our defeat as weakness." "Let them," the Emperor replied. "While they celebrate the human victory, we will prepare. This war has only just begun." As the damaged Draxon ships continued their retreat, they were unaware of the small human probe that followed them, recording their movements and transmitting the data back to Earth. Phase 2 of humanity's plan was already in motion, and the galaxy would never be the same again. 6 months had passed since the Jupiter incident, as it was now called throughout the galaxy. The political landscape of interstellar relations had changed completely. Earth, once dismissed as a backwater world inhabited by a primitive species, now sat at the center of a new coalition of planets. The Supernova Treaty had been signed just 3 months after the battle. 17 alien species, many of whom had previously been hostile or indifferent toward humans, now eagerly sought alliance with Earth. The treaty established a mutual defense pact and opened channels for technology and cultural exchange. Captain Stephen Mitchell stood on the observation deck of the supernova vessel Intrepid, watching as the combined fleet conducted joint exercises near Saturn's rings. The view was impressive. Ships of various designs moved in perfect harmony, the starburst-shaped human vessels alongside the sleek crystalline ships of the Azurian Collective, the massive honeycomb carriers of the Vorgath Empire, and the organic-looking vessels of the Medullan Federation. "It's almost hard to believe," Stephen said to himself. 6 months ago, they wouldn't even look us in the eye. Now they follow our lead. "Because they're afraid of us," said a voice behind him. Stephen turned to see First Officer Nicole Rodriguez approaching. She was a tall woman with short black hair and a serious expression. "Not all of them," Stephen replied. "Some genuinely see the benefits of working together." Nicole nodded toward the fleet. "The Draxon have mobilized their reserves," she reported. "Intelligence suggests they've modified their ships to counter our singularity weapons." "They adapt quickly," Stephen acknowledged. "But so do we." In the secret facility orbiting Saturn, hidden from the eyes of even Earth's new allies, the next generation of human innovation was taking shape. Director Catherine Wells and Admiral Richard Hayes stood in front of a large window, looking at the experimental ship being constructed in the enormous hangar bay. Unlike the starburst design of the supernova fleet, this new vessel was spherical, with a smooth, almost featureless surface that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "The Eclipse prototype is ahead of schedule," Catherine said. "Initial tests of the phase-shifting technology have been successful." Admiral Hayes studied the strange ship with a mixture of awe and concern. "And you're sure we need this? The supernova fleet is still the most powerful force in the galaxy." For now, Catherine replied. But the Draxan are already developing countermeasures against singularity weapons. We need to stay ahead. What exactly does it do? Hayes asked, nodding toward the Eclipse ship. It can partially shift out of normal space-time, Catherine explained. Weapons pass right through it as if it isn't there. And its own weapons can strike from a slightly different phase of reality, bypassing any known shield technology. Hayes whistled softly. No wonder you've kept this from our new allies. Some secrets are still necessary, Catherine said, even in this new era of cooperation. On a distant world that had once been a Draxan colony, but was now under the protection of the Supernova Treaty, humans and aliens worked side by side to rebuild what had been destroyed. Engineer Paul Martinez supervised a team of human and Azurian technicians as they constructed a new power plant for the local settlement. Hand me the phase coupler, Paul said to an Azurian worker. The blue-skinned alien passed him the tool without hesitation. 6 months ago, such cooperation would have been unthinkable. The Azurians had considered humans too primitive to work with their advanced technology. Now, after seeing what humanity had accomplished with the supernova fleet, they eagerly shared their knowledge. Your people continue to surprise us, said the Azurian engineer named Keltor. We had mapped out all possible technological paths, but somehow humans found one we never considered. Paul smiled as he adjusted the power flow. That's because you all developed technology in similar ways. Humans had to think differently just to catch up. And now you've surpassed many of us, Keltor noted. Not surpassed, Paul corrected. Just different. That's why this alliance works. We all have something unique to offer. In the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Confederation, Ambassador Lyrax of the Vorgath Empire addressed the gathered delegates. Once, he had been among humanity's most vocal critics. Now, he was Earth's most passionate supporter. 6 months ago I stood before you and mocked human technology, Lyrax admitted, his mandibles moving slowly in a gesture of humility. I was wrong. We were all wrong. The hall was silent as the delegates listened. Some nodded in agreement, others remained skeptical, still wary of humanity's rapid rise to power. We laughed at humans because they were different, Lyrax continued. We failed to consider that different might mean better. Their approach to science, to diplomacy, even to warfare, offers perspectives none of our species considered. From their seats in the assembly, Earth's representatives watched with quiet satisfaction. Diplomatic Officer William Carter leaned toward his assistant. He's certainly changed his tune, William whispered. Amazing what a little demonstration of power can do, the assistant replied. William shook his head. It's not just the power, it's what we've done with it. We could have conquered half the galaxy by now if that was our goal. Instead, we've built alliances, shared knowledge, protected the weak. The human equation, the assistant said, quoting, a phrase that had become popular throughout the Confederation. Exactly, William agreed. Power tempered by compassion, strength guided by wisdom. On the edge of human space, the supernova vessel Defiance patrolled the border with Draxan territory. Captain Laura Bennett studied the long-range sensor readings. With concern, the Draxan war machine was on the move again, rebuilding after their devastating defeat at Jupiter. They're testing our defenses, noted her second-in-command. Probing for weaknesses, Laura nodded. They won't find any. Not with the combined fleet protecting this sector. And if they attack in force, he asked. Then they'll learn that we've been busy these past 6 months, Laura replied. The supernova fleet was just the beginning. In orbit around Earth, a huge space station was nearing completion. It would serve as the headquarters for the new alliance, a place where humans and aliens could meet as equals to shape the future of the galaxy. Lead scientist Alan Jackson stood in the station's central chamber looking out at the blue planet below. Beside him was Amy, the young survivor from New Montana Colony. She had been adopted by one of the scientists after losing her parents, and Alan had taken a special interest in her recovery. Is it true that the bad aliens are coming back? Amy asked, her eyes wide with concern. Alan knelt down to look her in the eyes. They might try, he admitted, but we're ready for them this time, and we're not alone anymore. Amy looked at the various alien representatives moving through the station. We have friends now. That's right, Alan said with a smile. And together, we're stronger than any of us would be alone. That's the most important lesson we've learned. As the sun rose over Earth, casting golden light across the space station, humans and aliens alike paused to watch the spectacle. 6 months ago, humanity had been dismissed and underestimated. Now they stood at the center of a new galactic order, respected not just for their power but for their unique perspective. The galaxy had laughed at humanity once. No one was laughing now. Instead, they were listening, learning, and working together toward a future that none of them could have imagined before the day the supernova fleet was unveiled.